การณ์จากภัยก่อการร้ายอย่างเป็นที่จับตามองจากทั่วโลกนะคะโดยเฉพาะกระแสคาดการณ์ที่ว่ากลุ่ม IS อาจจะแผ่ขยายมายังภูมิภาคเอเชียตะวันออกเฉียงใต้หรือกลุ่มประเทศในอาเซียนมากขึ้นโดยเฉพาะหลังจากได้เห็นเหตุโจมตีที่กรุงจาการ์ตาเมื่อช่วงต้นปีที่ผ่านมาในช่วงเดือนมกราคมแล้วสถานการณ์สำหรับประเทศไทยควรจะต้องเฝ้าระวังอย่างไรรวมถึงภัยก่อการร้ายในระดับอาเซียนถือว่าหนักหน่วงขนาดไหนคืนนี้ดิฉันจะคุยกับที่ปรึกษาคณะกรรมาการยุโรปด้านความมั่นคงค่ะคุณเทเรนซ์ซูลิวานค่ะ Hello Mr. Sullivan thank you for joining me again
My pleasure
You must be following the situation quite closely in terms of terrorism in different regions The main question that I'd like to ask is about the latest attack in Jakarta in January How has it shown that Jakarta has finally got ISIS fighter in the country?
Before the attack, the new government in Indonesia had announced that it had taken control of the situation with JI, but the terrorists organization in Indonesia had recently announced that its allegiance had changed to ISIS. And it wanted to prove that even though the government said it had control of the situation, that it could do whatever it wished. So it decided
to show resistance.
Yes, by picking a random Starbucks at random and say, even in the heart of the capital, we can go and we can destroy.
That's very symbolic location to destroy.
Yes. It hit two things. One, it showed anti-American feeling, and two, it showed total control. You may say you control me, but I control you. Look what I can do. Right? Since then, several countries in ASEAN, Indonesia being one of them, has gone on very high alert, expecting another one to occur. And all reports are saying that another one will occur in the next 6 weeks, somewhere in Indonesia, or in another part of ASEAN.
Next 6 weeks since that day that Indonesia
Since we're
was
talking
attacked.
now, while we're talking now, this is chatter. Chatter decides that maybe there will be something taking place. It could be in the Philippines.
Have you got the exact location?
I might have a location in my head, but I'm not going to disclose it. But I would say that it could be Philippines.
Why?
I think ISIS wants to show that it is in control of Southeast Asia. So if it's in control of Southeast Asia, it can choose its country. So maybe the next one will be in the Philippines. Maybe. It could be in another country. But for argument's sake, let's say it's in the Philippines.
So the evaluation or the prediction is 6 weeks from now, any country in 6 countries, any target in 6 countries
Yes.
of ASEAN
It
could become target.
Could be. That's what
of
the
IS.
chat is indicating. But with all this indication, events between then and now can change events. So although everyone's on very high alert, it could change. It could not happen. And it could happen.
What's really going on between the ideology of IS and the link with different groups in ASEAN?
Well, that's simple. That is purely finance and organisation. If you're going to fight an insurgency, you need organisation, funds, and weapons. Traditionally, the Philippines, southern Thailand, Indonesia have had very poor weapons, very poor finance, and total non-organisation, all working different ways, and causing mishap and causing problems, but not causing enough stress that each country can't control it. But in the last year, events have shown that they are getting more and more organised, more better financed, and more weaponry. The ones in the Philippines, American and Philippine troops discovered a cache of weapons, and the weapons they found were more modern than the Philippine army had. So they got them from somewhere.
Which are the countries in ASEAN that you consider vulnerable to IS attacks, in addition to Indonesia?
Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, and I would like to say Malaysia, although Malaysia is the rule which breaks the rule. Malaysia,
In terms of
in a recent poll, 10% of all Malaysian Muslims said they sympathised and agreed with ISIS. In that account, you would say, well, Malaysia's not going to be attacked. On the other hand, you have the Malaysian government saying they are so efficient, they've snuffed out all these potential attacks before they happen, which could be true, although I don't believe any country is that efficient, not European, American. Things happen organically. So I am surprised there's been no major event in Malaysia.
is it the country in waiting as well? Yeah, as you say, that it's one of the vulnerable countries.
It is, but also it supplies insurgents. Malaysian insurgents have been found in southern Philippines, in Thailand, and in Indonesia. So they are a net exporter, not officially, but because it's a major Muslim country, and it's built on Sunni guidelines, it has a sympathy with the Sunni point of view of ISIS. So they do tend to pop up in areas of conflict. You notice there's Malaysians, as you do Pakistanis.
For Thailand, what can you tell us about the situation in the south of Thailand and the prediction with the attack by IS?
I cannot give you any details of any attack by IS in Thailand. What I can say is that Pulo is far more organised than it has ever been. It has funds, weaponry, and there's our rumours, which may or may not be true, that there are maybe foreign individuals in Pulo fighting. And my worry is if the head of Pulo is in Syria, where he sets his organisation up from Syria, he has access in Syria to all the weapons of war he can get. He has access to funding and fighters. And he can funnel them through Malaysia into Thailand if he wants to. So I would be not complacent. I will take Pulo very seriously. In the Philippines, we know Pulo and the Philippine insurgents have met and spoken and been in contact, which is a dangerous sign. Now, are we seeing an outer rim of insurgents around Asia? You've got a mass inside the Middle East. You've got a fair lump inside China. You've got some in the communist Russia. You've got some there, especially in the Balkan states and in Chechnya, or ISIS. Are they now making a ring around Asia? My worry is they never stop. I used to believe that if you gave an area which is unhealthy because it wants independence, autonomy, and you made it wealthy, that would be the end of the story. It'd be like a federal state. But my belief now is with ISIS, you cannot do that because If ISIS became autonomous in South Thailand, it would want the next bit, and then the next bit, and then the next bit. You couldn't control them.
What about peace process, peace talk that the government is trying to pursue with the Pulo in the south of Thailand? Why having Malaysia is facilitator? Does it really help to reduce the risk of the attack?
Yes, it does. It does, but you must have reservations that sometimes organisations want to have talks to allow them to have time to reposition, rearm and restructure. So if you are going to have negotiations with Pulo, it has to be from a position of strength. You have to make Pulo be on the back foot, fighting for survival, and then you magnanimously offer some terms. You say to them, we can destroy you or we can come to terms. If they have a front foot and they're giving you problems and you say, well, let's talk about this, they know they're on the front foot. So if I was talking to Pulo and I was in the army here, I would make sure Pulo was on the back foot before I started talking to them. That they were in a defensive mode and they needed to talk to survive, not needed to talk to reorganise and rearm. Because they can disappear back into Malaysia.
But do you believe that ISIS can be really destroyed, especially it has strengthened its arms, its power, and they have cyber connection with different cells, different local groups in different regions? It seems that the name of ISIS is even more strengthening.
In Syria, which is the home of ISIS, and Iraq, which is the home of ISIS, if you can cut off the head there, stop funds going abroad to localised insurgents, then if they can't get funds to find arms, they can't fight. You're going to have to go and attack each group individually.
So that's the point, to cut off funding to ISIS
Yes,
fighters.
total funding, which is not easy because one of the ISIS's models is that when it's in an area, it allows the villages and the small towns to carry on as normal, but they pay a tax for the privilege. So they get the villages and the towns to fund them by getting a tax. Even if the town is not controlled by them, they can go out of town and they can assassinate one or two people, so the people pay the tax, so they're getting funds coming in. There's also some individuals who fund them, money goes out. That has to stop. The only way it can stop is if ASEAN has a single objective, and that is to stop IS spreading through Southeast Asia. Now, you've just come back from ASEAN. Do you believe ASEAN can work on an individual project to isolate ISIS and make it fall? I'm very dubious. Very dubious.
You mean ASEAN countries have to work in tandem, cooperate among each other, work
Must
as
work
a
together.
unit
Yes,
to
as a
tackle
unit. Yes,
ISIS?
because before it was
So far, have they done so?
no. There was a insurgents in Philippines, and the other country said, "Oh, poor Philippines." Then there's insurgents in Thailand. They go, "Oh, look at poor Thailand." Then there's insurgents in Indonesia. I look at Indonesia. But before, when they was all saying it was Philippines, and now they've all got potential insurgents, even Thailand. They need to work together to isolate these groups so they can't become one group. Because the next thing you'll be hearing is one name for one group fighting in all the insurgents.
What are the factors that hold back ASEAN countries not to work together to tackle ISIS
I think
or terrorism?
it's pride. They all believe they can do it on their own, right? That's the first one. Second one is they're not keen on sharing information amongst themselves. Thailand's not happy giving serious security information to Indonesia. Indonesia's not happy giving its information to the Philippines, and the Philippines doesn't want to give anything to everybody.
Is it because they think it's something to do with national security, so it's quite sensitive to share those information?
To be honest, I don't believe the Asian countries trust each other. They pay lip service, but I don't believe they trust each other enough to open the databases up between them and says, this is who's in our country. Maybe you want him, right? We're watching him, and you might say, yes, he's in a database, we want him, right? But they don't. It's only when something occurs, a name pops up, then they ask for some sort of help in getting this chappie sent back to Thailand or back to Philippines. And because the way this political stuff works, these people sometimes never ever get extradited. They stay where they are.
Which organization or who should be the center of having integration of this information among ASEAN countries?
I think a new organisation. There's Interpol, which everyone knows about, right? Which is not a police force, but it's an information gathering force for the police in different countries. There should be an ASEAN Interpol, where there's an organisation which is made up of people from all the area, and their job is to collect all the information and help stamp out not just ISIS, but organised crime in ASEAN, because it's also a big problem. And sometimes organised crime will go under the guise of ISIS if it doesn't good. Right? So I would like to see a organisation inside ASEAN which sole role is looking after these sort of groups purely on the grounds of information gathering intelligence. I don't want them to be going around like you see in the movies, Delta Force 5, whatever. Most information is done by gathering intelligence.
With Singapore, Prime Minister of Singapore, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong seems very much concerned with terrorism. He even said that Singapore will be attacked in the near future. It's only the question of when it will be attacked, not whether.
I sincerely hope not. Singapore is the finance house of not just ASEAN, but most of the Western world. It's the home of almost every bank in the world has a financial home there. It has a multicultural society which lives together quite happily, okay? But it does have lots of rules which stop people staying in Singapore too long. I believe it's a 2-year wait. If it takes 2 years to wait to get into Singapore to do work, and then once you finish your 2 years there, you can't come back for 5 years, right? All Malaysians must go home every night unless they are actually working at night right? So if you could damage Singapore, not only would you damage global finance, you would damage global security totally. It would be a disaster.
But Singapore is also very vulnerable.
It
When
has
you compare to
no
other
real army.
countries in the region.
It relies on a mercenary army it rents from another country. It has what is known as the Swiss method, which is you become a soldier, you serve your 24 months, you go home, and you're still a soldier until you're 50 or 60. And you expect to go back every year for 2 or 3 months to get retrained. So you've got a citizen army, in quotes, which is great, but it will be of no effect if they come storming across with tanks. They got a few jets, which is great for flypast and shows that they're gung-ho. But if they were faced with a threat from its nearest neighbour, it would have a serious problem. I don't believe Malaysia would invade, but if they had a few major explosions inside Singapore, tourists would stop going there. It stopped being a junction. It's a junction between Australia and Europe. People fly in to go to Europe from Australia and from Australia to Europe. It's a big junction. That will stop. it would cease to be a financial powerhouse. In the last recession, Singapore saved Barclays Bank from going bust. It saved General Motors from going bust. It saved Bank of America from going bust by buying lumps of shares in that company and then selling them back afterwards. If they hadn't have been there, General Motors would have gone. Barclays Bank would have vanished. And Bank of America would have vanished. So it played a big part. So it's a big player in the world. It may be small, but it's a big player. If that had terrorist effects there, it would be disastrous.
So far, what's your prediction or what's your evaluation on the situation
In Thailand? What I understand is the Thai government has said there are no connections between terrorism in Thailand. The question would be is, what's your definition of a terrorist? If you talk to the Thai army officer, what's your definition of a terrorist? And from his definition, you will find out whether these were terrorists. I personally believe they were terrorist acts. If they're terrorist acts, then they're done by terrorists. I don't believe these were from southern Thailand. This was done for a different reason. I don't believe they were gang warfare. I believe these were retaliation for something Thailand did. And what it did was perfectly legally right. What it did was perfectly legally right, and it had every right to do it. But what it did caused some sort of friction and caused these events. So I don't believe that this was gang warfare. Now, if you're saying, is there going to be terrorist attacks inside Thailand, you could not rule it out, because the more you squeeze Pulo in the south, the more it's going to want to attack in the north, just to relieve the pressure. So it's a catch-22. The more you squeeze one end, the more problems get the other end. Now, if Pulo is part of ISIS by association because of Syria, there's no reason why Syrians can't come to Thailand one way, or not even Syrians. There's out of the ISIS army, at least 25% are non-Arab. A lot of them are European, American, African, Pakistani. They could get into Thailand far easier than a Syrian can.
So Thailand cannot be too complacent
No,
and
can never
think
be
that
too complacent.
Thailand will not be attacked.
I sincerely hope it will never be attacked, but vigilance, you must always be on your guard, especially when you're fighting an adversary who you don't know, you can't see, and you can't hear.
But ISIS seems very advanced in terms of using technology, using social media to spread their message among their own supporters. What can government around the world do more, or what should civil society do more in order to
Close down
detect?
Facebook. If you close down Facebook, you would wipe out 80% of all messages going from ISIS to its supporters. It wouldn't help Facebook, but it would stop all of that, because you'd have to send an email to me if it wasn't Facebook. I'm not actually on Facebook. I'm forbidden to be on Facebook. I'm not allowed to be on Facebook. But if I was on that Facebook and you was on Facebook, we'd chat, right? If we weren't on Facebook, how would we chat? You'd send me a phone call or an email. Emails are read. All emails are read. In every country, emails are read. Phone calls can be monitored. Facebook, because the way it's structured, is almost impossible to monitor. So if you cut out social groups like Facebook, they can't talk.
Is it really true that actually the US government is in cyber war with ISIS for several years already?
NSA and GCHQ together have been monitoring, reading, recording every email, telephone call coming out of Middle East since the Gulf War ended. Everything's been recorded and read up. And the information is passed to relevant countries it concerns. So that has never stopped, and it probably will never stop. My fear is that if ISIS vanished tomorrow, they'll still be reading our emails and still be listening to our phone calls. That won't stop. Once someone's got power, they're not going to give it up. So a cyber war is taking place. At the moment, the West is in the ascendancy, but the more sophisticated these people get, the more harder it's going to be to stop them. I mean, at the moment, you have a standoff between Apple and the federal government. Apple's saying, no, I can't do that. If I give you that, you can now look at every Apple customer in the world. So I said no. They went to court. The court said Apple doesn't have to conform to the question. So now there's going to be appeals and so on and so forth. So governments want more and more power, more information. If you want to fight ISIS, you must always monitor everything they do. But ISIS also monitor and spread information on in-chats, which you may not even do. If you've got a game, do you play games? If you play games on your computer with friends, you have in-chat. That's chat in the game between you and your friend, which aren't monitored because the game is actually usually peer-to-peer or peer-to-two peers. So you can chat and send information in the games and no one ever knows what you're talking about. You can use code or non-code. So it's a war which is going to take years to fight.
To see it in perspective, what do you see is the most pressing concern of the widespread of ISIS in connection to Southeast Asia region?
It's people not taking it seriously. They believe it's so far away from the centre, it's a fad. They call themselves ISIS because it's a fad. They're not really ISIS, they're still really the same group they were 10 years ago, but using ISIS so they get recognised. And a percentage of that is true, but a large percentage of that is no, they suddenly realised they are being empowered by ISIS, where in the past they were seen as a isolated, arm's length group who caused problems. Now they are empowered because they can call upon ISIS all around the world to give them notoriety. And what terrorists need is notoriety. It's no good being a terrorist if no one knows about you. You cease to be a terrorist. You can only be a terrorist if everyone knows about you because you bring terror. So ISIS brings them notoriety. So we wouldn't be having this chat if ISIS wasn't around because it brings notoriety. And if you don't have notoriety, you're not a terrorist.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan,
Thank
for
you.
joining me. คือการประเมินสถานการณ์แนวโน้มการก่อการร้ายที่อาจจะเกิดขึ้นในระดับภูมิภาคเอเชียตะวันออกเฉียงใต้นะคะโดยเฉพาะการแผ่ขยายของกลุ่ม IS และการเข้าร่วมกับกลุ่มในระดับท้องถิ่นซึ่งก็เป็นความสำคัญที่รัฐบาลของแต่ละประเทศต้องพยายามที่จะกระชับความร่วมมือเพื่อที่จะต่อสู้กับกลุ่มก่อการร้ายในระดับภูมิภาคให้มากขึ้นค่ะทั้งหมดคือตอบโจทย์และที่นี่ไทย PBS สำหรับคืนนี้ดิฉันณัฐฐา โกมลวาทินสวัสดีค่ะ